My name is Ilona Curry, and I really want to thank you guys for taking the time today to talk to me. My aunt said that you were the right attorneys to talk to about the next steps in getting my nonprofit started.
Well, Ilona, my name is Tim Connect. This is my colleague, Bill Shedd, and we certainly hope we are the right people to talk to about all this. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about the organization that you would like to start?
Okay, well, it started about 2 years ago when my kids were home from school for the summer, and we could never find a playground to go play at. So I started thinking, what could I do to build a playground in my neighborhood? And of course, I realized the first thing I'd have to do is raise money. So as I was doing my research, I was very intrigued by the idea of people getting a tax write-off for donating to a nonprofit. So I figured out how much money I need. I think I need around $150,000. And I've already talked to some people, and I have about $1,000 in committed money for when I get my 501c3, I think it's called.
That's right.
Okay. And I know there's a lot of foundations in the area that like to do things to help kids, so I'm kind of interested in working with them. And once I get our playground done, I'd also like to help other communities build playgrounds in their neighborhoods too.
Where are you planning to build this playground?
Well, in our neighborhood, we have a playground that's a park that's centrally located, and I think that would be the perfect place to put the playground.
Is that a public park?
I think so, yes.
Well, that'll be an important consideration going forward. You're going to have to find out some details about that.
Okay.
Have you ever thought about who's going to operate the playground and maintain it after it's built?
Not really. I guess I didn't think about it needing to be maintained, but I have a few people that I've been talking to, so I'm sure that between all of us we could figure out somebody.
Okay. Have you ever served on a nonprofit board?
I haven't. I have friends who have, but I haven't.
Do you have certain people who you want to have on your board of directors?
I do. I've talked to 2 neighbors who are interested, and then my sister wants to help, and then I also have a friend who's done some fundraising, and then myself and my husband.
Now, do you know if any of those people have served on boards?
I guess I don't really know. Is that something I should ask?
Well, it's something that's going to become important because a board of directors for a nonprofit organization, a charitable organization, has some specific jobs and duties. That board is not only the face of the organization out in the community, but the board has, number one, you're going to go out and raise a bunch of money. You're going to have to become essentially a professional fundraiser. Unless your one person is very talented, you're going to have the whole board out there raising money.
Okay.
So that's something you're going to have to talk to your board about. Once you determine what your organization wants to do, you'll be able to know how to go forward. And determining what your organization wants to do, you need to put together a business plan or a plan of what you want to accomplish and how you want to accomplish it.
A business plan. I'm not even sure what that means.
That's something we're going to talk about in a little more detail. Bill will get into some details about what that plan needs to include, but essentially, if you go and you ask me or ask somebody else for money, they're going to want to know, well, what are you doing? What are you going to do with that money? So this is your business plan. How are you going to convince people that, number one, you can do what you say you're going to do, and then, number two, have the ability to be able to do it? Your board is in charge of overseeing this money, making sure it's spent for the right purposes. Your board is entrusted with a duty of loyalty, so to speak. The board, again, is the organization, and so people can't get on the board and just look out for their own interests. For example, if your brother-in-law is a playground equipment contractor, putting him on the board just so we can put the playground equipment in is probably not the right thing to do.
Okay.
Now, he may be able to be helpful to you, but your interest is in doing the right thing for the board, not having the individual board members do the right thing for their own pocketbooks.
Right. So how do I figure out what I'm supposed to do, what people can be on my board, and what their job's going to be?
Well, there are a lot of things you can do, and there's an organization in town called BEST. BEST is an organization which can help teach you and teach your other board members what some of the obligations and the duties are for a person being on a nonprofit board.
Okay.
There's training involved. You might have to go through some effort and training. These people who are volunteers, though, the board members really need to understand they're entering into a serious obligation.
Right. I don't know if they're going to want to go through training. I mean, they're doers. They want to get out there and build playgrounds and have a place for kids to play. I don't know if they're going to want to sit through training.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about getting your organization started, and you can make that decision as we go forward.
Okay.
Right now, Bill is going to talk a little bit about what it takes from a paperwork perspective to get the organization started.
Okay.
Well, Ilona, there's quite a little bit of organizational effort that has to be undertaken, and the board will be primarily responsible on the part of the potential charity to do this. We as attorneys will help you do that, and the first step would be to create a Michigan nonprofit corporation. It could be done in other ways, but most financial institutions, most donors, and most charities operate in this fashion with a Michigan nonprofit corporation if they're housed in Michigan. And that is created by filing articles of incorporation, and the articles of incorporation will specify that the entity will be operated exclusively for charitable purposes and spell out what those charitable purposes are. That is the creation and operation of a playground and the funding, at least the initial funding or maybe the long-term funding of this playground. And those are questions that will be dealt with in this business plan that Tim was talking to you about. And the articles of incorporation will also contain certain phrases that the Internal Revenue Service will require to be contained in the articles to explain to the IRS when we make the application for charitable status that the organization under its articles can only be operated for charitable purposes, and if it terminates, the remaining funds and assets of the corporation would have to be given to another qualified charitable entity. And we'd also put in there a provision that the volunteer members of your board of directors, unless they're grossly negligent, would be under Michigan statute exempted from liability for negligent acts that might have harmed third parties.
So, how do I figure out what phrases to put in there? And
Well, we will do the articles of incorporation for you.
okay.
I mean, you probably could go online and get some basic documents, but I can promise you they wouldn't be right for the first 3 tries, if the first 10. It will be quicker and easier if we take care of that for you.
Okay. And you said that you would mention volunteers in the articles of incorporation. I want to volunteer at first, but I think eventually I'd like to get paid for all of the work I'm doing.
Well, okay, you could be paid if the entity had enough funding, and if you had expressed to the potential donors that there would be paid employees. In other words, you've got to be very, very clear to prospective donors and grant makers that we either do or don't have paid staff, and if we do, here's who they are, and here's how much they get for their efforts. And it has to be, it can't be over market and so forth. So, and that's how we characterize the charity. But at that point in time, you would lose the volunteer status and you would have different legal standards of duty to the corporation. Now, the second major aspect is, and I said we would do the articles of incorporation, we would do the bylaws for the corporation, which kind of say this is how it works, like the election of officers, the annual meeting, and that sort of thing.
So that's kind of like your rules, right?
That's pretty much like the rules.
Okay.
And then we would do minutes, and at least each year we would do dated minutes to show that we elected or re-elected some directors, that we elected officers, that we settled on the business activities of the corporation. And then, but before we get to that part, we would also, now this is the organizational stage, we would prepare for you, based on your business plan and the answers that you give us, we would prepare for you a Form 1023 that would be filed with the Internal Revenue Service. Now, this is the first time, well, this isn't the first time, because Michigan has a filing fee for the Articles of Incorporation, and the Internal Revenue Service has a user fee for the filing of the application for determination of exempt status. That's the Form 1023. And the user fee is, in this case, because you're going to be raising more than $10,000 a year, from what you've told us so far, for the first 4 years, your user fee is going to be $850, and these are subject to change all the time, so it depends on when we get the application in. It might be $1,000. So you're going to need to expand your horizons a little bit about the initial $1,000 that somebody said we might contribute when you get your 501c3. You're going to need some cash ahead of that. And probably a minimum to do this would be somewhere between $3,000 at a very bare bones to more likely $5,000, because you'll probably want an accountant to work on part of your business plan, which is necessary for us to prepare the Form 1023, and that business plan would include a pro forma 3-year financial statement of resources and expenditures. And that's a guess, because you don't know how much you're going to receive each year, but it's got to be realistic. And it also is what your prospective donors are going to look at and say, well, if in year 3 they really could raise the rest of the money for this, then we'll make a grant. But some might make contingent grants. And you won't find one organization that will make the entire kitty. You'll have to find a lot of people. So,
wow, it's a lot of information and forms and filing fees that I don't know how we're going to raise money for. I didn't plan for that. And an accountant you mentioned, and
Well, there are attorney fees that go along with that too, as you know.
an attorney fee.
And Bill's estimate, he's tried to include attorney fees in there, but this is all subject to what really happens.
Right, and all I wanted to do was build a playground.
well,
Okay.
at least we can tell you that if you could do it, building a playground is a charitable function.
Right.
Now, the question is, can you get a determination? In other words, can you bring all of the things that you need to bring together to make this organization a qualified charity for which we can get a determination?
Okay. Now, you talked about BEST earlier, and you said that I have to answer a whole bunch of questions for all of these forms. Is there some place that I can get, would BEST have the forms or questions so that I can start talking to the people that want to be on the board?
Well, Best will have some forms, but before we get into the forms that Best has, why don't we let Bill sum up the paperwork items so you know exactly what those are to start with, and then we can talk about other resources.
Okay.
Okay, so just to summarize, we said the first thing we need to do is to create the Michigan Nonprofit Corporation. And with the Articles of Incorporation, we would do bylaws and organizational minutes. Then we need, as we're doing that, we need you to be involved with BEST or other entities like them, although we think BEST is best in this community. And then when you have developed this business plan that Tim was talking about, then we will do the Form 1023, which will delve heavily into that, and we have to also file a conflict of interest policy with the application to the IRS, and at that point, pay the user fee, and then we usually have a brief period of responses from the IRS about, please supplement the answer to question 9, Part B. And then we write back and say, to clarify that, this is where the source would be, and this would be the expenditure, and so forth. Technical things like that. And then within probably at maximum 90 days from the date of filing the IRS application, you should have your determination of charitable status. And then you could have donors make gifts.
Okay.
Now, you've heard a lot of information today.
I have.
You can consider, after listening to all this, do you really want to try to form a 501c3, or would you like to go out into the community, start asking some serious questions? Is there another organization out in the community you could become a partner with? and work with them to help, you could raise some money and see if this other organization would actually be your fiscal sponsor, or they would help keep the books, and so you wouldn't have to go ahead and form your own 501c3. I think Bill can talk about that a little bit too.
Well, what Tim is talking about is we would find another organization that's already an established 501c3 or a charitable organization in the community, and their mission wouldn't necessarily have to be playgrounds, but you could go to them and say, what we would like to do, and we believe we have the ability to raise resources for a playground. We think we have interested people. We don't think there's a need for us to continue as a charitable organization after we've done that. If we raised the funds, would you, the other organization, be willing to receive the funds as charitable contributions? And we'll come up with the plans and specifications for the playground. We'll get permission from the park board or whoever we need to get it to do this, and then they will spend the money as you identify the contractors and that kind of thing.
So in that case, we would be working mostly on the playground and not all the paperwork and plans that you were talking about, and they'd have to do all the work, right?
Well, they already have done the work.
Right.
They're already a 501c3. They're already working. They're doing whatever their charitable purpose is, and they might be willing to help you accomplish. I mean, because most charities, although most charities have a specific purpose, there might be some who would be willing to help you accomplish your purpose and use their good offices because they're already established as a charity.
Okay.
And if you're unable to find somebody like that, BEST will give you, again, they can have some material for you. One of them is called a basic infrastructure checklist, and I think there's another pamphlet too, isn't there, Bill?
There is, on policies that you want to utilize, how to be the best charitable organization if you decide to go that route.
Okay. Wow. Okay, well, that's a lot of information for me to process, and I need to take it to the people who are interested in helping me and have them figure out exactly what we want to do. And at that point, once we figure that out, I can contact you guys and contact BEST and get everything started.
We'll look forward to it.
Great. Thank you guys.
Well, you're very welcome. Good luck.
Thanks.